Hi guys, we haven't had a video for a while because I've been doing a lot of preparations for our Kimberley trip next year. So I haven't been sailing anywhere new. I've just been out sailing to all our regular locations to test all sorts of improvements that I've been making on the boat. It's going to be a long trip. It's going from Darwin to Derby, about 1,000 nautical miles by sea. There's only really one place that a small boat like Narngah can actually reliably buy fuel, and that's Dogleg Creek past Quillen Island, which is almost at the end of our trip, so really speaking we have to carry most of our fuel. Been adding lots of fuel storage to the boat, 40 litres either side on the rails. I've made some rails between some stanchions and to which I can lash 40 litres either side. In the cockpit well at the front, I've also got a couple of tie down points to put another 60 litres up there. I've got tie down points in the main cockpit here to put another 40 litres, and I've got 32 litres in the back tank next to the motor. A total of 210 litres, which is a lot of petrol to have on board. And we'll also probably put another 60 litres in the dinghy we'll be towing. Of course, as I use it, I'll be using it sort of evenly to make sure the boat remains balanced. So other things we've been doing is playing around with electric to extend our fuel supply. The fuel supply on board, we're going to be carrying almost 270 litres of fuel, so it should be enough. But just to make sure, we've put extra solar panels on the top of the bimini here, about 360 amps worth, watts worth should I say. And they power 2 lithium batteries in the back cockpit locker here, a 150 amp hour battery for the boat electric motor, and a 100 amp hour battery for the dinghy electric motor. The dinghy motor will push the dinghy around at 5 knots, which is going to be more than adequate for most exploring around anchorages, although the dinghy will also have a 15 horsepower petrol motor on it at all times, so you can plane if necessary. But it should save quite a bit of fuel that way. And the boat, the yacht motor itself, it pushes it along at about 2.5 knots in calm water, which gives the boat good steerage. And seeing as most passages in the Kimberleys are done with going with the tide, 2.5 knots plus tide will give you decent coverage between anchorages and save a lot of fuel that way as well. Of course, that's only if there's no wind. If there's wind, we'll be sailing like we are just now. At the moment, we're sailing from Geelong to Port Arlington, just testing out some adjustments I've done to the masthead rig that I've added to the boat, and so far it's going very, very well. The masthead rig I've added, because the original RL has a fractional rig, 60% fractional rig, and it is quite a slow boat in lighter winds, so I added the masthead rig to be able to really increase performance during light winds. And in winds up to 15 knots, I'd say I can get anywhere between 1 and 2 knots extra speed now. After 15 knots, you just have to start reefing down the big head sail, and it becomes much the same as it was before. You can have a maximum speed on an RL of about 7.2 knots, is the fastest I've ever had it going. And generally it cruises at around 5.5 knots quite comfortably. The dinghy we'll be towing is a surf life-saving type dinghy, just over 4 metres long, with a 15 horsepower motor on the back, which can plane it at about 20 knots should we need to use it that way. It also doubles as a life raft because it's a very seaworthy dinghy. It's incredibly hard to flip in rough seas. I've tried my hardest over the years and still haven't even come close to flipping it. And yeah, so it also will double as a life raft should the worst happen on the trip and we end up with a sinking boat. It also has a mount for the electric motor, so I could use the electric wherever possible. And then like I say, the electric pushes it at 5 knots, so in most anchorages to get ashore or just to have a bit of an explore, that's more than adequate. But the 15 horsepower will push it along at a good 20 knots. So like I say, if we really need to rely on it as a life raft, it's actually better than a life raft, and it can actually get us places quite quickly, and also push against tides. People say it's a very big dinghy to be towing, but I did a trip about 8-9 years ago now up the side of Cape York in a smaller boat than Narngah, and I was towing the same dinghy, and in a 20 knot breeze we were sitting on 5 knots quite comfortably, towing the dinghy. So I don't see it being any real issue. And of course the other consideration is you need a big dinghy in the Kimberleys. The last time I was in the Kimberleys I only had a 2.1 metre dinghy. It was a tiny little dinghy because I was just for me. but I got stalked by a crocodile in Combe Bay out of King Sound, and spent about 4 or 5 hours waiting for that crocodile to move on. And as soon as I tried to motor back to my yacht, it appeared again, and I was absolutely petrified. So the advice is always have a decent sized dinghy if you can. So that's why I'm taking that particular boat. Which it doesn't owe me anything. I've had it for ages. It's a great boat, still in good nick, and it will do the job. You know, all chart plotters. We have 2 laptops. We have, you know, everything, all the paper charts for the area, and everything we need to make sure we try stay as safe as possible. But there's always the chance that things can go wrong. You know, it's got a lot of uncharted waters in the Kimberley, so you have to be incredibly careful and prepared. I've downloaded tide charts for every single tidal information point along the Kimberley coast, so I'm pretty well covered there now. And I've been seeking advice from the Kimberley Cruising Yacht Club, doing as much reading as possible of all the cruising guides and any other information I can find on the net, and making a annotated set of Google Maps of the whole trip, which give me all those things that I've been finding, so that I can actually open up a book and just check, yes, I have to leave at this certain time to make that point around that particular cape, or the tide's best at this particular time after a certain tide station. Very, very important to be prepared like that, because it means you'll enjoy your trip. Now, you definitely have to build up a good collection of spares and tools, but keeping in mind that you've only got limited storage on the boat. So, you know, the main thing for me is I've got a motor that's prone to fuel blockages, despite having many really seriously good fuel filters in the system. So I need to carry spares to be able to, you know, strip the carby, clean the carby, replace gaskets, that sort of thing. Yeah, you have to have a good range of tools too, but again, you've got to watch out for weight. We'll be carrying some a cordless drill, a cordless angle grinder, and yeah, of course a good set of hand tools of various sorts as well. You definitely have to carry a decent fiberglass kit, because, you know, if you hull your boat, you've got a chance that you may be able to get yourself out of trouble by repairing a major damage to your boat. So you do have to carry a decent fiberglass kit, and also a good kit for your inflatable if you're towing an inflatable like we are. So the other thing you've got to be ready for, of course, or you've got to have good communication. So we've got a satellite phone, which is our main source of weather information and also communication in the event of an emergency. We have VHF radio, of course, on the boat, and we also have personal locating beacons on both our PFDs, and have 2 EPIRBs in the boat itself as well. So we're reasonably well covered that way. We'll also be carrying a shortwave radio, which can pick up the Bureau's automated weather forecasting system for right around Australia, and also gives hourly warnings for things like cyclones developing. So that we've got 2 sources of information that way. The satellite phone communication will be strictly for email and for grid files and for emergency phone calls. Other things you've got to do is also have a well-stocked first aid kit. We've been going to the doctors and we've been getting things like broad spectrum antibiotics prescribed and stronger painkillers, because, you know, when you're out there, you are going to have to be your own doctor. Should you get a tropical ulcer or a cut that becomes seriously infected, or even just a urinary tract infection, which is quite common on yachties as well, and makes your life miserable unless you can treat them. So you really do have to be prepared with that. And of course, all the usual bandages and tourniquets and everything else that you might need in a first aid kit for most situations that may occur while you're out there. The painkillers were also there because, if you injure yourself incredibly badly and you're in seriously excruciating pain, you need something to dull the pain. Other things we've been doing things like installing some decent fans inside the cabin and the V-berth, because the first part of the trip is going to be very warm and humid, so we need a bit of ventilation, especially from my partner Helen. And we're generally upgrading the boat with lots and lots of bits like net lockers all over the boat for extra storage. We've added plastic storage boxes that we can divide up our rations for the 3 months we're on the water, so that we know that we're keeping up with the right amount of food. I've added extra storage under the cockpit for a few extra cardboard boxes for bulk items like flour and rice and that sort of thing. We've also come up with some drying out legs for the boat. The RL, having a fairly narrow skeg underneath, doesn't dry out particularly well on a hard bottom. It tends to fall over. So we've used the rails on the gunnels on the RL, which are quite strong, and reinforced them with some bolts through the gunnels into the inside of the cabin, where we've put on some big plates to spread the load. The legs themselves are made strong enough in compression to be able to balance the boat, but weak enough to bend should the boat twist around badly or the legs get caught whilst drying out, so it won't damage the boat. But either way, in the Kimberleys there's lots of big tides, and being big tides you will dry out from time to time, so it'd be nice to be able to have a method of drying the boat out stably. And the legs have been built to fold up and out of the way, so they are fairly quick to deploy. All you need to do is to attach the plates to the bottom, swing them out, and drop a pin through the gunnel to hold them in place. That's probably enough for now. I've only really considered the really biggest things you need to consider on a trip like this through the Kimberleys in a trailer sailor. It's quite a logistical exercise, and I hope that this video might help a few others who might think of doing a similar sort of trip. Either way, we're looking forward to our trip in April, and hopefully it will be a trip of a lifetime.